All right, welcome to another stringing hangout. Today, Herb and Alan join me. And last week, it was kind of fun. We had our 500 subscriber giveaway. And I think you guys had joined. Yeah.
Yep.
And hold on one second. I have some feedback here. Okay, I had another video playing, I guess. And so I was listening to myself twice. But anyway, yeah. So last week we had the giveaway, and that was great. I actually just sent all the strings out today. And Herb, I went ahead and autographed that one set. It was really hard because it was a dark colored package, and it was
Yeah.
hard to find a Sharpie that actually, marked on that. But anyway, so I got all those out today. There's one actually that I still need to get out, and so it was for Richard. I didn't get his address, so I wasn't able to send that stuff out. But that was fun. That was fun last week doing that. And there was actually yeah. So we kind of have I have a few things I want to go over today, and then maybe you guys, if you want to chime in on some other things as well, we can start some new topics. The one thing I think carried over from last week, we had I think it was Francisco. He had a question, and he was asking about how do you reach out to college tennis players to get rackets strung, or how do college players, go about, getting their rackets strung, maybe in the last minute, and who does that, and how can you maybe get involved with that? And so, I wanted to talk a little bit about that because we have Herb here, and Herb, I think, strings primarily for college players or college teams in his area. Is that as far as I understand? Is that right, Herb?
Yeah. Oop, my wife that's my wife. Yeah, and all the colleges are different. So, it's I've had a lot of people ask me over the years how to get in with a college, but they're all different. A lot of them. So, like starting this year, we have another university in town that's actually starting a men's and women's team, and they're just going to pay work study hours. So they're going to have a student that comes in and strings for them. Same thing with Baylor University. They just pay work study hours. So every year they have a couple of high school kids, or they'll be freshman college kids. They bring them in there and teach them how to string, and then they string for them until they decide they don't want to anymore. Uh, some of them will contract like with me, like Tech. They contract with me, and I really kind of got in the door just because we always go to the matches. We knew the coaches, and they knew I strung rackets, and they had a stringer, back 11, 12 years ago, whenever it was. When he left, they asked me if I'd do it. So I did. But it's kind of hard to say how they'll do it. Like Memphis, I can't remember if it's Memphis State, Mississippi State, one of them. They have a team manager that strings for them, plus a couple other people doing work study hours. TCU, they actually have the TCU courts are actually they're the university courts, but they also have some public courts that they run, and they have a guy that's on site that strings everything for all of them. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
actually, some of those things totally make sense when, sometimes you have to, it's not a quick and short term kind of thing, right? It's
right.
let's build this relationship with somebody on the team, whether it's possibly the coach, it's some players hanging
Yeah,
out, watching matches, talking to the coach, and then maybe the opportunity is not right in front of you, meaning that you can slide right in. Oh yeah, we're looking for somebody,
yeah,
right? But who knows, down the road, or something happens with the stringer, or they're not happy with the service, or they're looking to go a different direction. Your name is going to come up, right? And
yeah,
I think that's kind of how I initially, when I was working with a few places
yeah.
in
And like
California, some junior colleges.
UNT, they're only a women's team, and it's their head coach that actually does their stringing.
Right.
Now, I will say a very common statement I get from visiting coaches is that one of the hardest things that they deal with when they're on the road is finding a good stringer to string for them. Because just because the university they're going to has a stringer doesn't mean that that person will string for the visiting team. And so, I mean, if somebody wants to kind of quote unquote, start reaching out. So what I do every year when Tech posts their schedule, I go in and look up all the schools, all their addresses, all their coaches. And about a week before they come into town, I'll send all of them either a text or an email, let them know who I am, how to contact me. And I mean, I get several comments every year. Hey, thanks for reaching out to us. We didn't know who we would go to. You know, we don't know anybody in the area. So
that's a really, that's a great idea to reach out to the coaches,
but
build like a network.
On that note, you kind of got to be a little flexible because they may need you to come pick rackets up at 10 in the morning, 7 at night, 10 at night. I mean, it just depends on when they practice.
And you have to have a good amount of reels too. You got to have a good amount of reels.
They'll have all their string.
They'll have all theirs, even in college.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. But I've met them at their hotel. I've met them at restaurants before. I meet them at the court a lot of times. So it just whatever works out best for you and them to pick up rackets or drop off.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, when you're talking about the hotel. I mean, in college, it's not going to work quite like on the pro tour, but like, it's kind of like if you know where the player's hotel is and you set up a room and you have connection with a couple of the players, and then the news gets out pretty soon, you might have 5 or 6 players that you could possibly string for, and so forth, or a dozen or so.
Well, yeah, if you reach out to their head coach, and because that's what I did, I just reach out to the head coach and the assistant coach, because you can reach out to the head coach. All he's going to do is give your number to the assistant coach. Mm-hmm. But all they'll do, they'll gather up all the rackets, have all the string ready. They'll just call you up, say, hey, I've got 10 rackets for you. Can you come pick them up? I'll go up there, pick them up, and come home and string them.
Yeah. And because most players are going to have probably, at least 2, 3, 4 rackets, depending on, they know themselves and they know their frequency of their string breakage. They'll kind of have an idea. But so you're really not going to need to be stringing on site at the matches, because it's only going to be, it's going to go it's going to go what, a duration of what, about a week?
No,
or a couple days?
For the college, no, the college will only go for a day. I mean, they'll play like 30, 35, 40 minutes. They'll play doubles. When doubles is over, they'll play singles. That'll last maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. But they'll have an hour warm up. So it's rare to string during the matches, but every once in a while, they'll have me do 1 or 2 just because they'd be out there during practice and somebody pop a couple of strings or something. Hey, can you string this one real fast? And that's pretty rare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's probably the stringing at home for your team per se. That's probably the best, because that's more of a long-term relationship. Yeah. That's something that you can do for the whole season, and you're there, and throughout when they're practicing and so forth. So you're picking up a lot more rackets. Going on.
Yeah, well, I actually have like some little racket stands that I keep at the courts. So I just go, when I get off work every day, I just go by the courts. I pick up whatever rackets they have, come home, string them, then drop them off on my way to work in the morning.
What kind of rates do you charge for the collegiate stuff?
For the local team, I'm just charging them $7 a racket. The visiting teams, I charge $20 a racket.
Yeah, so your that 13 discount is basically just because it's your team, and you have that relationship. Yeah.
And they told me I could charge more. I don't know, I might, but I hadn't really decided. But yeah, I mean, by charging them $7, we kind of get used to the courts here and there. They make sure if a coach asks them for somebody, they always refer them to me. If they have tournaments to NCAA, if they ever host that, or ITAs, if they ever host anything, they always make sure I get to be the stringer for all that. So.
Yeah. So although you might be saying in the short term, wow, $7, that's not a whole lot. I'm not, I can barely afford to do that. But then when you think about what it possibly could mean down the road, and the business it brings you, the $20 a racket business that it potentially can build for you, you're thinking more long term, and that's really the way that we should be thinking about this. Of course, you got to be careful when you're discounting. You're discounting with a purpose, and it's that team, and you're not offering that to everybody. So
Yeah.
you've got a purpose in doing that. What I usually talk about is when people discount just for the purpose of discounting and getting business. That's not the way to build long-term business and so forth. So yeah, I think that answered. It was actually Cody, because he's on today, and he said, "Sweet,
Okay.
yeah, that was my question. I was mainly trying to see if it would be worth it for reaching out to players or services." Yeah, so hopefully, Cody, you can give that a shot, especially since you sounds like you have some colleges in your area. Yeah, just reach out to anybody. Even community colleges. That's usually a little bit different, but because community college, you don't have per se the core group always there. It's just it I think it works a little bit different. But yeah, just try it out in your local area. That was a good yeah. Thanks for answering that question.
Yeah.
Another thing I'm going through some old tennis magazines, and so I'm just kind of going through. This one's not that old. This was only 3 years old, but I'm going through just looking for anything that's related to stringing, strings, tennis technology that's useful or maybe meaningful to racket stringers. To kind of just um, share a little bit about that kind of information. But I noticed in this one issue, this is from July, August 2019, Tennis Magazine, this issue right here. I looked through the whole thing. There is not a single thing related to strings, stringing, or even that part of the whole our whole part of the industry. And I thought that was kind of just when you think about trying to promote, trying to help. There's stories about tennis players, and there's the regular articles and so forth. But I think that there should be something in every issue about the technology and sometimes there's articles about the technology of rackets and stuff. I see that every once in a while. But as far as stringing, sometimes that's just kind of left off to the side, for maybe the industry magazine, like the USRSA or other racket stringing industry, for them to handle, but you don't see it in the mainstream. But I think it would be important to have it in tennis, because whether you're a stringer, whether you're a player, trying to figure out what you want to get, I think it should be in every single issue of a tennis magazine. So I was kind of like, wow. So I'm going to go through some more and see what else. I mean, because every once in a while you do find an article, but it's kind of interesting that they don't have something every month to share about that. But I don't know. I don't read tennis magazine regularly anymore like I used to. So I don't. It seems like it's kind of changed a little bit. I don't know. Are you guys reading tennis magazine or?
We get it, but I don't ever read it.
Yeah.
I look at it sometimes. I guess I'm not going to get it as much because I think USTA has stopped supplying it as part of the membership. So
yeah, that's
unless
how
you
I used to get
subscribe
it
to it
too.
separately, it's going to drop way off.
Yeah, that's true, because that was kind of a way for them to expand their market a little bit, just by forced readership, kind of, in a way, right? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we look mostly now for online resources, and we would look up certain things, and we get all our news online. But it is sometimes nice just to, when you're sitting there somewhere, just to read an actual tennis magazine or any magazine, right? I still like to read books, actual hardcover books. So but yeah, that I didn't realize that they kind of had dropped that off. So good to know. So also. I wanted to kind of get your opinion on starting knots for crosses. I was looking at the RSI magazine this month, the Racket Sports Industry, and it highlighted 3 different starting knots in it. And the article was titled "Best Methods for Starting Crosses." So of course this is on a 2-piece stringing job, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't need to.
Yep.
Create that knot on that. But one of them was the standard starting knot, one was a fishing knot, and one was just called figure 8 starting knot. See, I don't even use a starting knot because I use a starting clamp. So I use the same knot that I use for tie-offs because I use a starting clamp. You know, I clamp off the cross strings with my starting knot, and then with my starting clamp, and then I will pull the string through. And then after I've weaved 3 strings, then I go back and I will pull with the machine with my extra 5 pounds or 5% or 10% tension, and then I will tie off like I normally tie off. So I don't even use a starting knot. When I first started stringing, I did use a starting knot, and what I found just in general was sometimes the knot, depending at that time, if that specific hole had a large grommet, some of the knots would kind of sometimes maybe come through the grommets a little bit too much for my taste, because later on when you're pulling the strings, it's pulling against that, plus it's pulling against another string. I just never found success with starting knots, but I know a lot of people use them, so I kind of wanted to get your guys' take on what you do regarding starting knots.
Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, Patrick, I do the same thing. I don't like starting knots. Keep it simple and consistency. That way, all 4 knots are essentially the same knot. So I don't use a starting knot.
Yeah, I don't either. I use a clamp.
Clamp and I usually use the Wilson Pro knot for the final knot.
Yeah, I do Parnell's or Wilson Pro if it's in a tight little spot.
Yep, actually, somebody commented just now about that. They said most of the time I use the Parnell knot for starting. Otherwise, I use a starting clamp also. So that seems to be the consensus, I think, on a lot of is not using a starting knot. I mean, if you know how to use a starting knot, if you know how to tie a knot, there are some good options for you, and you can secure the string just as well. But I think it's just so much easier, and you just get into a certain pattern, rhythm, and mindset that there's no need in going to something else when you have something that works efficiently.
Well, as you point out, it's hard on the grommet, and I really don't want to mess up the grommets. At least in my own rackets, you can't buy the grommets. They're really expensive and hard to find, and changing them is a big task. So I'd rather not do it.
Yeah, I'd guess that most people that use a starting knot are probably beginning home stringers that don't even know what starting clamps are yet. As soon as they find out, and they'll get on Tennis Warehouse or something like that. Ooh, a starting clamp, and next thing you know, they quit doing it.
Yeah, starting clamps are expensive, and when you buy a stringing machine, they don't normally come with a starting clamp, or if they do, they come with a really crummy one. But I don't even think most of them do anymore.
A little gamma one that the plates come out.
Well, yeah. Hey, let's talk about starting clamps then. That I think that's a good segue into that, because it is kind of important to get the right starting clamp. And I think we've talked about this before. Maybe it was with Herb, or I don't know who else. We in the past we discussed like having 2 starting clamps, right? We discussed why we use a starting clamp. We use a starting clamp not only to hold the string in the racket for the purpose of tying off and starting crosses and starting mains, and we also use it for backup on our stationary clamps, so that we don't have any slippage in the string when we're starting a string job, because that's where you damage your string. I mean, if one slip is all it takes and that string is damaged, because I've done that before. I've done that and go, oh, okay, well, the string kind of slipped, and I go, oh, that's okay. You know what? I'll just start it over. No big deal. Well, later on, you find out that string breaks, either while you're stringing, or later on, you know that it's reduced the performance of that string, or the longevity of it. But no doubt, I mean, even though it doesn't look like it sometimes, it does. And so, that right there is a critical use for starting clamp when you're starting your string job. And another time you use it for a bridge, right? You use it for a bridge between the racket and your stringing machine. when you don't have enough string left to pull that last string and then to tie off. So it's got, those are three primary purposes. A fourth purpose that I use it for is when I'm stretching natural gut outside. I'll wrap it around a pole. I'll put a towel around the string, wrap it around the pole, around pole. And then I use either one. If I have two starting clamps, I'd prefer to have one in each hand when I'm pulling, or I will put the string in one clamp and then pull. And so
You use
really I
them
have
for
four
tying knots?
purposes. Oh yeah, and for tying knots as well. So there's five reasons why you have a starting clamp. Tying knots every single time. I don't use a clamp of any other kind because I know some people use the awls, or there's other tools. Yeah, there's other tools and stuff. But yeah, no, I always use a starting clamp. You got to be a little careful that you don't pull it towards yourself. I've hit myself in the face a few times with it. Yeah, you learn once you do that once or twice that not to do it with yeah. And but yeah, so those are the five reasons, and I think we can all agree that makes it worth it. So then of course you go, okay, well, where do you buy it? I learned early on that the Babolat clamps were always the best. I used to have the blue clamps. It was a blue clamp, and it had really good springs in it. And if you buy a Babolat stringing kit, you can get the starting clamp and all the other tools. If you want to spend $400. Or you can buy the clamp individually. There's a few places online that you can get the clamp. You can sometimes find it used on eBay, maybe, somebody's selling a clamp here or there. There's a lot of clamps coming out of China, just, mass production.
Mm-hmm.
You find them on Amazon, people selling them. You can go to AliExpress, which is a Chinese website, right, that you can buy products from that come straight from China, and it's like an eBay kind of sort of place. Well, it's not like eBay. It's like Amazon, but
Amazon.
yeah, it's kind of like Amazon, right? And so you can buy, these things, and you don't know what that quality is going to be like, right? Because it's all about the spring. Because if they're not going to hold the string when you need it to, it's useless, right? So you think, well, I can buy it for $20, this way, or I could spend 40 to 70 on a good starting clamp, maybe even a little bit more, but you don't really need to go over $100. But yeah, Gamma makes good, makes some decent clamps as well. I've had good success with that. Wilson has them as well. I'm not sure who makes them for Wilson.
Wilson are the Gamma clamps. They just don't have Gamma on them.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
They're the same factory.
yeah.
I just got an Alpha clamp in. It was a really good clamp, man. They had the hardest springs I've ever had.
Yeah. So some of those, and they come in different widths as well. You can get the regular narrow one, or then they have a wider one as well. I used to have a wider Babolat one. I don't have it anymore, but so you got to look at that. So I would definitely.
Oh, don't forget Yonex. Yonex has that like $250 one.
Yeah, I have not had any exposure with that one because but I know Yonex has quality equipment and stuff, so that might be worth looking into. But you can't go wrong with the brands that we mentioned. I would just be careful if you're going to buy one off Amazon that's a no-name brand and it just came mass produced, something that's just some off brand from China. So I just be careful with that. I mean, you could try it and it might work because you can also buy spring replacements too. You can buy just the springs and so forth. But I would stick with the brands that we just mentioned. The Gamma, the Wilson, the Alpha, the Babolat, the Yonex, and so forth. So I don't know. I think anything else you guys want to say about the starting clamps? Buy two.
Yeah, buy two.
Yeah, I mean, for even if it's your second one and you're only going to use it for a bridge, because that way you have the tubing and everything all set up, because you don't always want to have to put that together every time you need the bridge. You could use a cheaper one for the
Yep.
bridge, if but maybe one of those cheaper ones.
Yeah.
If
I'm saying that's
because
what I do. I have a gamma clamp set up as a bridge, but we use the Babolat for everything else. I would say
and
though, because I did just buy that alpha clamp, and the alpha clamp is better than the gamma clamp. But if you go to Tennis Warehouse right now, the gamma clamp is actually like $3 or $4 cheaper than the gamma.
Muted.
yeah, here I actually have an alpha one, and it's a little bit wide. Well, actually, the badminton ones are the real narrow ones, but
Yeah.
but yeah. So this one's it's about an inch. I think this one's about an inch wide,
Yeah.
and it works really good. The springs are pretty
Pretty
stiff,
tight.
pretty
Yeah.
tight, and you have quite a nice space there. But maybe we should talk about proper use of these, because I know sometimes the tendency is to want to go really deep
Yeah.
when you are putting string in there, and you don't want to go all the way down because you're going to crush and damage the string a little bit more that way.
Maybe when you're bridging, you don't mind doing that, but if you're doing it somewhere that's going to stay in the racket, you want to be more cognizant of how deep you go and maybe do some testing.
Good point.
And that's what I always, in all my little videos, I always tell people never go below the eyelet for pulling. But yeah, if you're going to do a bridge, it really doesn't matter because you're going to cut that off anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, because the deeper you go, you will get more of the pressure.
More leverage.
More leverage. Yeah.
Yeah, there's your gamma and
yeah.
Babolat difference. And the gamma has little plates in them that can come out. I mean, if they do come out, you glue them back in, but they can come out.
Oh yeah, the pins and so forth. Yeah. So that was So that's always a discussion that I always have. Make sure that you buy a starting clamp. That tool is very important. With it, make your stringing a lot easier.
Yes.
I was trying to see if I had anything else. I think that was it. As far as strings, I had gotten an email this week from Frometh, and they were promoting the Gamma Verve Soft 16. That's a new string. I think it's out in the market though. But I was reading a review about it too, and so I think that's kind of the advantage of connecting with like these online retailers or wholesalers like Frometh and Tennis Express, or not Tennis. Herb, you were saying who was bought out? Tennis Express. Was it Tennis Express or was it?
Yeah, they were bought out by the same people that just bought out Midwest Sports, Tennis Point or something like that.
Oh wow, they bought Midwest Sports.
Yeah,
okay, so they've kind of combined some of those online. Yeah, I mean, there's just a few out there now, and it's just good to get on their email list, to kind of get the latest news and when new strings come out and discounts and so forth, because when you're buying strings to kind of supplement your part-time business, I mean, when you're buying strings, for part-time stringing business, you don't have, the ability to buy in deeper quantities that the manufacturers want. If you go directly to them, right, to have an account. I remember even when I had a shop, it was like that. It was like
they want you to buy like
they would they want you to buy $3,000 or $5,000 over a period of time, and you get the deeper discounts that way and all the freebies and all that kind of stuff, and it's great.
400 yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, some of the other companies like Solinco and other ones work with you. You don't have to have as much to open an account, and you might want to do that. Find one of those guys like Solinco or
Diadom's real good about it.
Yeah, exactly. Those two definitely work with more people, so that might be a good one to start. And Solinco has a pretty good following. Yeah. So, but otherwise, you're always looking for the deals, right? And they're there. You just have to look. I think it's worth going on those sites every week. Sometimes Tennis Warehouse even has some decent deals that would make it worthwhile to
They'll have like
with their
a
discounts.
buy two get one free or something.
Yeah. So it kind of nets it down a little bit for you. But yeah, so Alan, anything you want to discuss this week that tennis wise? Any questions you had on stringing or
Well,
any
one of the
aha
strings that
moments?
we've been using, my doubles partner likes to experiment with different strings, and so he got some Ukrainian string. I don't know, maybe a year or so ago that he really likes. So I guess the question is, are we still going to be able to get that string or not? But
Was it made in the Ukraine?
I think so. They have a
Boy.
warehouse in Chicago where they're
Uh-huh.
shipping from, and the payment center was in Europe somewhere. I had a little trouble getting my credit card company to accept it, but
I think
I
that
I don't
answers the
know.
question right there, because
Yeah,
I don't think there's going to be anything left in Ukraine here pretty soon, that's going out, because it's just I've been following it a little, continuing to follow it since the
yeah.
beginning, and it's just like it's not getting any better. It's
Tour
pretty
Hex, I
devastating.
think, is the string that we've
Hmm,
been using.
interesting. Yeah, maybe if somebody else picks it up, or if it's also got some other channels in Europe, maybe that they
Yeah.
can make it outside of the Ukraine.
Well, they know the formula.
Of the brand? What is the name of the brand?
Um, Gee, I'll have to look it up.
I'm wondering, yeah, because I hadn't heard any string coming out of there. But there's a lot of little companies that make string. You just look on some of the European, the ERSA, even European Racket Stringers Association. You see some of the strings that they um, have in their system, and it's like things you've never heard of. And um, you can sometimes just Google some general terms, and you can find some of those small companies. And sometimes you can get some demo strings sent to you cheap, or for free, or really inexpensive, so you can try them out.
Ayami,
How do you spell that?
Mayami.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
I've heard of that one. Yeah, I've seen
yeah, I've
that.
seen people use that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
They have a number of strings. The stuff that we've been experimenting with is Tour Hex.
Hmm.
It's a hexagonal poly.
Hmm. Yeah, that seems to be a pretty popular thing these days.
I was using a lot of Solinco before that.
Yeah.
The square stuff, Tour Bite Soft, that kind of thing.
So you're
Yeah, it's still
using
real popular
polyester.
here.
I use a hybrid.
Hmm.
I use Monogut ZX in the crosses usually.
Have either of you guys experimented with the natural gut strings from? There's a company that makes natural gut strings that have their own website, and you can get sets for 15.
Yeah, they're like,
20.
I know who you're talking about. They're like discount natural gut or something. I can't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, 10.
I
Yeah, I
have a
don't have
few.
it.
I have a few sets of those that I bought off of eBay that may be what you're talking about,
Yeah,
and
probably.
I've used one, and I don't know. It's been a long time since I played with gut. I I didn't fall in love with it, but at least it's not terribly expensive, and
Yeah,
so
it's
you
good
can
for
experiment
I
with
bet
it.
that might be good for hybriding, because
I
um,
did that, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I hybrided with Glide and also Monogut ZX, I think. Um, I've got some Glide that I bought a few years ago. It's supposed to be fantastic, but I don't know. I just can't quite fall in love with it. It's kind of pingy.
hmm
It has a very different sound to it.
yeah. I haven't tried it myself, but yeah, the natural gut is one of those things that you just it has a very small market. It's not really
Yeah,
for most people, just because of the cost factor. But we all know that it's generally going to be the best performing string in many of the categories, whether it's being arm friendly, whether it's the control, the touch, the feel, the tension maintenance, all those things. Natural gut generally has the best of all of those things.
Yeah.
Just don't
Oh,
play with it in the rain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't play with it in the rain. If you break a lot of string, it's gonna be expensive for you.
Yeah,
I
I only
played on
know
a
a couple
really
people here that use it.
I played on a really foggy day, and the strings broke the next
Yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah.
Overnight, they were
Certain
broken.
parts of the country, it's gonna be even more problematic because it gets too cold and then it starts getting real brittle or getting stiff, right?
Hmm.
If it's too hot, then it kind of stretches out and lost a lot of the elasticity in it and stuff. So yeah, you have to really be careful on how you handle that and stuff. But
And it's a lot of extra work to string because you have to be so careful with it.
yeah, yeah. Once you've done enough of it, and somebody who wants to string at a professional level and who wants to string for professional players, they need to learn how to string natural gut because it comes up and you can't just be like, oh yeah, sure I can string this, the first time out, because there's a little margin of error there that you're going to mess it up a few times.
Yep.
You're not going to string it quite as uh, you're not going to string it correctly, the first time you do it.
Or
And
you may
you
leave
learn as
marks in it, so it's real obvious that something
yeah,
was different. Or
yeah, exactly. Or when you're tying off, sometimes it becomes a challenge, and you can only, or even, putting it through crossed
pushing
grommet.
it through
Oh yeah, block
a
grommet.
hole,
People
a
mess
blocked
that up
hole.
all the time, right? Because then it starts to unravel, and half of it goes
Tough.
under, half of it goes over, and you just pull on it, and you damage the whole
Yeah.
string. And then you're like, oh, what am I going to do now?
Yeah, do you have spare gut?
Yeah, do you have spare gut? You can roll it. Sometimes you roll it, right? Because that repairs it sometimes when you're
Mhm.
rolling it a little bit. But you can really mess it up, or just even just stringing it as you're pulling it through, you get it kinks and you don't see the kink and you pull it. No, you just damage the string. So uh, sounds
Does
really
it
simple,
typically
but
break when you do that, or does it just leave a mark when you
it
get a kink
depends.
in
It
it?
depends. I think what some of the gut that has a lot of coating on it can withstand a few little mishaps. Wilson has always been like really good with that. Wilson gut has always been really like almost feels rubbery. I mean, has a really good coating on it.
Hmm.
But some of the Babolat's, or even like maybe Pacific or some of the ones that just the coatings aren't as durable. Um, you don't have as much leeway as far as when you're pulling through, you got to be a little bit more careful. I mean,
I just slow way down.
when you're clamping and you like kind of crimp it a little too much, that sometimes can come out a little bit. As long as you don't do it too tight,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um,
When I'm doing gut, I just go really slow, so I don't make mistakes, but it takes me extra
yeah,
time.
yeah. And when you first start, uncoiling it, that's pivotal, right? That right there, you need to know how to correctly uncoil a set of string, because
Yeah,
sometimes
don't let it burn
you
that.
open it up and you just start pulling out, right? No, because that will create a nightmare for you before you even start stringing, right? I've seen videos on people trying to teach that the right way, and that's good. I need to do that too, make another video on that. But yeah, I mean, that's something that you have to just really be careful with when you're and then stretching gut. That's why I like to pre-stretch gut too. It takes that coil memory out of it, so it's nice and a little bit more flat. Um, when you're starting to string. But if you don't pre-stretch it, sometimes you have to deal with that coil.
Yeah, the coil.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit problematic. So just if nothing else, just um, pre-stretching it can kind of alleviate that. So always recommend it with natural gut. So let's see. We had somebody comment. That was Richard. Hey guys, what are your thoughts on the Bayardo? Where can I best get parts? Well, you're in luck since Bayardo's still, in production. I haven't bought any parts for my Bayardo, but Wilson. If you go to the Wilson website, that would probably be a starting place. I don't know where else for the Wilson. I don't
Well,
know. Herb, what's your?
Well,
experience with that.
so Wilson, they don't actually do their they don't do the service on it. It's actually JC through tennismachines.com.
Oh, okay.
So if you call Wilson, they just send you to him. So you
Just
have to
send
go
you
to
to him.
him
Okay.
probably for parts. And he even has trouble getting some of the parts. I mean, not everything, but some of the parts. But this question actually came up to me this week, and I found a place in Europe, and I can't remember where it is. I have to try to look it up and maybe post it in comments or something. But there's a place in Europe that had a lot of the parts, a lot of the little stuff that you can't find, like a replacement, the little plastic pads, and they actually had base clamps, the 4-tooth clamps. They had the 5-tooth clamps. I mean, they had a lot of the parts.
And yeah, I'll have to get that. I'll have to get that from you too, so that.
Where are those machines made?
Biardo, they're made in the same plant as the Gamma, and I think it's in Taiwan. I'm gonna lie to you.
Okay.
I mean, I know a lot of the engineers, when they worked on it from Wilson, so at least you got a sense that they were customizing it for what they wanted, and they were designing it and creating it. It wasn't just like, oh, let's see what kind of machine can you make in your factory, and then I'll just slap my name on it, like some of them do.
Yeah.
At least you
It's
didn't. You
different.
don't get that. It's different. Yeah, there was actually some American engineering or engineers from Wilson involved in that whole process, and I think that makes it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Because
like here, Monday or Tuesday last week, I was at my office. And I keep YouTube in the background just playing. And the Wilson commercial came up from like 12 years ago, and somebody's face was on that commercial talking about it.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I know. That was because that was the first year at the U.S. Open that the machine was not in production at that time, and they were just working out all of the details of the machine. And so they were asking all of us there, like, okay, so what's good about this, what's not? And then I think they went back to finalize some of those little things, like, this works okay, this is kind of like a little bit wonky, and so they took some of that information, and then I think they finalized it, and then it went on the market after that. But that way we all tested it at the Open, because we were all using those machines, and those were the first ones, I guess. And the engineers were there with us at, a couple of them, and so that way they can kind of see the play testing on it and stuff. And yeah, it was that was kind of interesting. And then we made that video. Remember? Is the pre-stretch by the Biardo good enough for natural gut? Well, I've never used the machine's pre-stretch system that much because I like to just pre-stretch it by hand, and that's mostly what you're taught when you're at a tournament. That's how you do it. You don't use the machine. But I would imagine if you're just wanting to stretch it out as you go, then that's fine. It might take longer.
I've had a couple of players in the past that have asked me for, like, I want a 15% pre-stretch under. I want a 10% pre-stretch on. So I do use the machine for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll still do a little manual thing, just get the coil out and then pre-stretch on the machine.
Hey, we have somebody new joining too, the Racket Stringer. He says, hi, everyone. All right. Yeah, it's great to see some new people on the stream. Don't know if there's any other questions. Yeah, we can just leave it up. Let's just leave it open for the next few minutes in case there's any questions per se from the comments. So if anybody has a specific question about anything stringing or stringing equipment. But yeah, the Biardo, I don't know, how much longer. I mean, it's been in production for quite a while. Hopefully they'll keep it going for a while, because like, I know right now everybody talks about like Babolat, because in the past those were like the greatest machines, right? And they were plentiful in the U.S. and they were bringing them in, and there was different places you can get them, and you can get them through Babolat and all that. It's just harder now, right? And it's harder to find parts on many of the machines. I know they're used at some of the tournaments, right? I'm trying to think what what Grand Slam? The French,
The
probably.
French
No.
used to all the time, but I think it was Yonex this last year.
Yeah, things have changed a little bit. But yeah, they're great machines, and it's like I hope they come back. But
Yeah, see, well, when I got my Biardo, I was actually on the list to get the racket. What do they call it? The new racket station or whatever they
yeah,
call it.
Racket Station.
I
Yeah.
was on the list to get one of those. Then all of a sudden, and I was contacting the guy about every month. And then all of a sudden, nothing, and it went away. And nobody had ever replied to my emails. They wouldn't take my calls, and
Yeah.
they didn't come. So I got the Biardo. I'm glad I did, I guess.
Yeah. There was an article just in last month's issue of the Racket Stringing Guide, and I think it was let's see, it was for the Ghost, the Gamma. Was that the Gamma?
Alpha.
Alpha, yeah, sorry, the Alpha Ghost, and it was a review on that, and that machine looks pretty good. It's a little bit lighter. You can actually travel with it if you don't use the stand, and you can put it on a table and stuff, and it's I think a little bit more maneuverable than the Biardo. It had a lot of the same, a lot of of the features that you want if you're stringing at a tournament. And I think the price point is probably a lot lower too. I don't know the exact price on it, but it's probably around 3 or 4. It's probably in that same price range as like the head machine's a little bit more, but the head and the Slinko. But I think all machines are now, the high end professional tournament grade machines are all about that $4,000 to $7,000 range, I think. And I think the Alpha and the Alpha machines kind of come in more at the entry level part of that.
Yeah,
there was I don't know, I think Herb, because you're on Facebook a lot, and you're on that a couple of those stringing chat rooms and stuff, or the stringing rooms, right? And there was a question that came up a couple days ago from somebody. They're like, yeah, I saw this ad for this Alpha machine, and from China you could buy it for like $400, but you had to buy two of them or something, and that was a scam of some sort. Because I saw that one time too, and I was like, oh wow, maybe I'll buy that machine, and so you see those kind of scams coming up and stuff, and it's just I hate to have somebody lose all their money because it looks, if it looks too good to be true,
it probably is. Yeah,
it is, and you got to just be careful of anything international like that. But
okay, so I'll tell you a funny story since we're waiting for questions. I'll tell you a funny story. So last week, I think it was, I was up at the courts at the university, and one of the guys, I think he is from Poland, caught me in the locker room, and he was just kind of talking to me about stringing machines. He was talking to me about the Biardo L. Is that a good machine? Is that, asking me all these questions. He's like, so my dad's wanting to learn how to start stringing, and he's been watching videos, and he sent me some videos to watch on the machine, and it was you. He's like, of all the people in the world, he's watching videos of you. I thought that was funny. But yeah, he was over in Poland watching my videos.
Sometimes the world is a little smaller.
Your videos are really good. Yeah, your videos are very detailed, and you methodically go through some of those things, and it's really a good teaching.
Yeah, and I noticed on the UK RSA website that they link my video when they're talking about it.
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, I should be making more instructional videos. It's just sometimes hard to get into the mindset of making an instructional video, because I always forget things I want to say, and then I'm like, oh, I need to redo it.
I do that too. That's why I make so many different videos, because I want to talk about this, and I'll make a video.
Yeah, and then I forget, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to.
I'll do it next time.
Yeah, so that's why sometimes just having dialogue like this and having this community. But I like this kind of a setup where we just can dialogue and talk. And I've learned some things about, you talk about a place where you can get some parts for the Biardo, and just every once in a while something new that I haven't thought about, or that I don't have the reference to to know that part of it or whatever. So yeah, it's really helpful to kind of have that, and bring other people on and just kind of have a discussion about different things. And yeah, talking about college and college players and stuff like
Well,
that.
here's a question for you, Pat.
All right. Is it lucrative being a professional stringer? And I'm assuming by what they say lucrative, I'm assuming they're talking about money lucrative.
Well,
Now, if we were talking about anything else outside of money, I think it is lucrative. It's lucrative in the sense that you build up a awareness of your professionalism and what you can, you know, let me back that up. So most of the professional stringers that I've met stringing at tournaments, they either have a stringing business wherever they come from back home, or are a coach and have a stringing business back home. And so this just is, when you're a stringer, you just love stringing and you want to get to the highest level, that you can. And so then when you reach that, for some people, they enjoy stringing under that pressure and just kind of in that realm of, professional tournaments, because it is a whole different level, and it's kind of fun. It's there's a lot of energy, around it. You're like in, I guess the top tier in that, in that profession. And so it is fun in that way. And in that sense, it can be lucrative in the sense that when you go back home, you talk to other people and you're like, yeah, when I'm stringing on tour, so it builds up your reputation and your credibility. And I think it just helps you back home, wherever you are, what you're doing with tennis. It just exemplifies that and makes it, builds that up. But as far as financially lucrative, yeah, not so much, because I mean, it can be where you can make money at doing it, but if that's your only source of income, you're probably not going to make it unless you are stringing for, back when, as an example, back when some of the top players would have their personal stringer, whether it was Agassi or a few other people that, you could probably almost make that work, but even then, it's not consistent enough over time, right? If you work for one of the companies that, do those kind of services, you're always on the road, you're always stringing, and, you have a place to stay, you have food, you have all those expenses taken care of, so you can survive, and for a short while that might be fun, a couple years, or whatever. But ultimately it's not, unless you get in, I think the money is more in the customizing, where the companies are sending you the rackets and you're customizing it for players, and so forth. You're like that middleman, you're customizing. I think that's going to be where the money's at. So once you get into that part and you're a stringer, then maybe, you could make it. Generally, what happens when you work at a tournament, for that team, whatever the team is, you're going to make a daily wage, because not everybody's there for the whole, the same duration. So what you make a daily wage, let's say $300 or $350, and then you get a food allowance, maybe $25 a day, and then you get a hotel room that you usually share or whatever. So that's not too bad. Sometimes you have to pay for your airfare there. Other times, you get compensated. They give you some string maybe at the end, and then you can always turn that around, and that's worth a little extra money for you too. But the problem is that team maybe only has so many tournaments, and so you're only going to be able to maybe go to 3 or 4 tournaments, and then what do you do in the rest of the year? And a tournament could last 3 weeks or it could last 4 weeks, or depending on, because usually the Grand Slams you could be doing a potential of 3.5 weeks, if you are there at the beginning and then you leave, when it's all done. So yeah, so so I'd say, is it lucrative being a professional stringer? Yeah, it's probably not going to be a career, a career, a good career move. I would, if that's what you wanted, if that's all you want to do, you've got to have something else to subsidize it. Whether it's a tennis business back home, being a coach, maybe being like a real estate agent, there's something that's flexible, because you have to have something that's flexible, because when there's a tournament, you got to be just able to go for a month or 3 weeks or whatever. And then when you come back home, then you can go back into your other gig, so it's got to be something that's flexible. That's just my, take my experience from what I've seen, what I've been part of, and over the years. And but it's a great thing. A lot of people, have shops back home, and then they go string at 3-4 tournaments a year. And then they just go back to their shop, and then, so they're full-time in tennis, but they're just not full-time professional stringers, tour stringers. So.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's kind of my take on it. So, but yeah, I mean, it's fun, for a while, and after a while it's work.
Yeah. Now, when you first get into it, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to do this. I want to do them all day long.
I know.
And a few years later, you're like, man, I need a few days off.
Yeah. It's like, no, that was fun for a while.
Yep.
It's fun being at tournaments. It's fun being at tournaments. I love being at professional tournaments, behind the scenes and all that. But there's definitely better behind the scenes professional jobs than being the person stringing the rackets. What I would have, I'm like, you go to the press room and you see all the press from around the world. They're on their laptops writing their stories, for the thing, or the photographers down on the field, or there's just so many, or working for the ATP or the WTA, in the behind the scenes stuff, or
how do you feel after a 10-12 hour day stringing? How's your back? How are your fingers? It's a tough job.
Yeah. The first 3 or 4 days, your fingers still, you don't have anything on your fingers. Then about, day 4 or 5, you start taping them up, and at night you put them in some salt water, like was like Epsom salts or whatever. Yeah, you just
toughen them up.
You soak them and stuff, because then they start, the fingers start cracking, and then you have to build up tough finger, your skin has to build up. If you're doing a lot of tournaments and you're stringing a lot, then it's not so bad. But like if you're coming from like just stringing occasionally to all of a sudden going into a tournament, there's going to be that tough, because you have to build up the calluses and all that, right?
Yeah. I've told the story. Last year I brought a kid in from Dallas. He's a great kid. He'll probably help me again this year. But, he was all pumped up, man. He was going to string all night long. And I told him, I'll promise you at least 50 rackets if you can do it. And, he was all about it. And at racket number 48, he tapped out. So, man, I can't do it. He had to quit. I was like, yeah, it's different.
Mm-hmm.
He thought stringing at a PGA store prepped him for long-term, long nights and hundreds of rackets a day, and it didn't do it.
Yeah. You might need to start a little bit slower before you like move on, like from occasional to, professional level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you do have to, your back, and you have to stand for long periods of time, and you have to have proper motions, in the way that you string. Because if you're only stringing one racket every once in a while, you might not use the correct posture and all that, and the way that you're pulling and stuff. But when you're pulling all those strings over and over again, you got to do it the right way so that you don't stretch your muscles out. You got to stretch,
start cramping,
and take care of
repetitive stress injuries.
Yeah, exactly, because that definitely happens. But some of the guys I've strung with, there's a couple guys that are like 70, in their 80s, or mid 70s, maybe even, yeah, and they've been doing it a long time, and they can do it. They take care of themselves, but yeah.
So he wants to know about stringing business.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll answer one more question, and I guess we can call it a day, if you guys want. See, I appreciate the tour level explanation. I meant stringing business. Oh, Oh, like doing having a stringing business full time. I'm a high performance coach myself and have credentials. Oh, it slams. Okay. I bought a used by Ardor right after the pandemic. Oh, great. Yeah, that's a good that's definitely one good one to build your business with, because you can sell that as one of your benefits. Tour. Okay, I meant stringing business professional, and so his initial question was, can it be lucrative? Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, if you're building, I mean, Herb knows this too from having stringing business, but um, when you look at a tennis shop, right, or any kind of service business, the labor is where the core of your business is, at least in my opinion, and that's what you have to rely on. And if you sell rackets, and can customize rackets, even minor rack customizing, just, replacing grommets, replacing grips, um, balancing, those kind of things, along with stringing, that's, I think, where your core business is, that's going to maybe pay for your rent and all those kind of things. I would
Yeah.
definitely start out trying to do it without having overhead, and start building up your being able to buy your strings and inventory, because that's a lot of money. Try to do it without getting into any debt. But yeah, I think you can have um, a great, if you're trying to move into a full time, then I think you definitely need to have a retail location,
Yeah.
um,
I mean,
and
just
you need to have a clientele built up. If you're in a place that doesn't have a lot of tennis shops, but it has a lot of tennis and a lot of tennis courts, I think you kind of got to go, about a 45 mile radius or so around where you're at, and see what's out there for tennis. See, because
yeah,
I
because
think
you're
that would be
competing
kind of
with
your
yeah, because
market.
you're competing with all the clubs, all the specialty stores, all the other home stringers. I mean, there's a lot of competition in stringing. I mean, even my tiny little town that I live in, I mean, I'm competing against what, one, two, three. I can count at least 7, 8 other places that string that I'm having to compete against. Not to mention, almost all the high schools have their own machines now. Uh, so I've lost all of that, but I mean, it's
One
hard. I mean, I'd make decent money. I ain't gonna lie. I mean, I can probably make average about 15,000 a year just stringing out of my house. So that's
Mhm.
not bad, but I'm not gonna live on it.
Mhm.
one thing you might do is Tennis Spin did a program, and he walked through his tennis shop and talked about how much he made from
Yeah,
each thing and the markups. And I think the clothing was one of the areas where they make more of a markup, but they end up with a lot of stuff they have to almost give away at the end of the season. So
yeah,
it's I think shoes were another thing. Of course, now you can hardly get shoes. So how do you
yeah.
make money on something you can't get?
Yeah, but yeah, I've mentioned before. I mean, everybody's a little different. Every reel a little bit different. But like a reel of string, you're only making a profit on like 3, maybe 4 rackets on that, because everything else is just paying for that reel of string.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys bring up a good point with the whole the way merchandising and being able to get merchandise and shipping issues and kind
Mm-hmm.
of this post-pandemic situation that we have globally, and with war and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it brings, I think, some different challenges to the table. But I think for Richard, he wants to know, I'm either going to, want to make some use of it or sell it. But yeah, I mean, I think just building up a little stringing business to see if that's something that you like to do, if you
Yeah,
like to string for other people, because, ultimately, I think that's kind of what it comes down to,
yeah,
if you like that kind of thing. And, it's a good part-time business, and you don't really have to put a lot of money into it now that you have the machine. Buying a few reels of string, just kind of having kind of uh, a good good mix of poly and multi-filaments and a few basic synthetic guts. You could get away with just having 5 to 10 different types of string to get started. You can
mm-hmm.
advertise for free, whether it's on Facebook, Facebook Marketplace, Facebook locally. Um, even like Craigslist, and then also some, neighborhood kind of
Yep.
online community things that are available. We have something called Nextdoor or something like that. It's like
we have that.
yeah, and so people are always advertising. I don't know if you're supposed to advertise on that for your businesses, but it's like, hey, I just moved into town and this is what I do, and that kind of thing,
Yeah, I
right?
see those
So
all the time.
yeah, and so those are ways to, I think, go down to the courts where you play, or the parks that have a lot of tennis, and kind of hang out there.
Talk to a bunch of the local private coaches.
Right. And all that kind of stuff is not going to cost you anything. And that way you can kind of see getting a little bit of business, and then it just builds up. But I think you'd probably have to give yourself a good year, 6 months to a year, to see if it's really going to work out for you in your area.
Yep.
But yeah, give that a shot. But on the other end of it, if you had to get rid of your Bayardo machine, you probably shouldn't have a problem getting rid of the Bayardo machine, because it's
probably not.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I'd recommend. Give it a shot, for a year, see if you like it, see if it's worth it for you, where you're at. Or, you could probably sell it for what you paid for it, or close to it. So
I sold my old Gamma on Craigslist in 40 minutes in the middle of the night. So they go fast.
Mm-hmm. You see, my last Gamma machine, I was going to keep it, but I had somebody offer me $400 more than what I'd paid for it. And I'd had it like 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah, the price of machines has gone up so much. You can probably do that even better now.
Yeah,
Yep.
And during the pandemic and stuff, especially, it seemed like everybody was buying stringing machines. You couldn't find them there for a little while.
Yep.
But all right, guys. Well, thanks for coming on this week, and we'll see you again. On a future episode, hopefully. And if we come up with some good, I always like when I get some new comments that I can go over the following week and stuff. So some of them I'm probably not going to be able to answer today, and so I want to try to answer as many of the comments. And I know being active I'm going to try to get a little bit more active in some of those Facebook groups, because there's some good questions and good responses in there too. So I would definitely recommend, if you're looking for a place for answers, or if you're looking for a resource, to find things, some of those tennis communities on Facebook are good. So yeah, check those out. So all right, Herb and Alan, have a good rest of your weekend, and we will see you online somewhere.
Yeah, we'll be doing wheelchair tennis. All we're doing.
Oh, okay.
My
You
wife,
got that coming up? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
my wife Charity, she's running a weekly wheelchair group. We're trying to start a competitive team here in town.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're trying to sign. So the Big 12, we're getting rid of Oklahoma, we're getting rid of Texas, but we're bringing in 4 new schools, and one of them is the University of Houston, and they actually have a wheelchair team. So there are 13 collegiate wheelchair teams out there. So we're trying to convince Texas Tech to pick one up too.
Yeah, I wonder if wheelchair tennis has gotten bigger over the years. But I have a friend here on Maui, actually. She used to be a professional wheelchair tennis player, played at the Grand Slams and stuff too. So
yeah, the guy right now that's currently number 5 in the world, his parents just live down the road from us.
Yeah, it's great though that they that's been becoming has become a bigger sport and stuff. It's great to see in different types of tennis, whether it's the senior tennis, or wheelchair tennis, or it's just nice to see.
Yeah,
different aspects of that.
That's all we'll be doing.
Yeah, and then pretty soon it's all going to be paddle tennis and pickleball, right? That's taken over.
No strings.
Yeah, no strings attached. Yeah, I know. It's unfortunate in that case, but all right, guys. Have a good week, and we'll see you soon.
All right, have a good one.